Well, guys, what's going on? It's me, Jay, here to talk about the new goings on in Israeli politics, the new revelation in the politics of the state of Israel. Results came in last night. It was a long road. It was a heavy road. People were wondering what's going to happen. Are we going to see the return of BiBi Netanyahu, Benjamin Netanyahu, to prime ministership? Israel, over the past couple of years, has had a tumultuous um, scene at the top. Netanyahu was there, then Netanyahu was thrown out, and then we got uh, Naftali Bennett. He was only there for a while. Then Naftali Bennett was thrown out, and then we had Yair Lapid. Yair Lapid, his replacement, and then Netanyahu, who we thought would be in jail by now because of all the numerous scandals that he was involved with the mishandling of funds with regards to the Israeli government, is back in power right now. And it's largely due to the shift in Israeli politics towards the extreme right, especially the man Itamar Ben Gvir, who is campaigning for him. This guy Itamar Ben Gvir, is a very far right politician, a polemicist, if you will, a demagogue. He is anti-Arab. The things that he is saying is very inflammatory. The type of person that would have been considered in Israeli politics on the Jewish side as an outlier, 10, 15, 20 years ago, like Mir Gahana, a Mir Gahana type character, like the individual, a person that would have um, been the mentor to or the inspiration to a Baruch Goldstein or a Yagil Amir, is now at the center of Israeli politics. And maybe because it's gotten that bad, because the pullout in Gaza in the 2000s was that bad, and people figured out Oslo, a dead dream. So the country shifted further and further to the right. And of course, they did it not only culturally, with religious Zionists taking up a tremendous amount of seats, but they did it economically as well, which we all know um, economic conservatism is never good for people on the lower rung of society. But needless to say, Netanyahu has done it for the third time in his life. He is Israeli prime minister. He became it for the first time in the 90s, after being the one that, not that he inspired the death of Yitzhak Rabin, but he stoked the flames that inevitably led someone to kill Yitzhak Rabin in 1995. Then he had his presidency, his up and down prime ministership in the 90s. Of course, in his book, BiBi, he talks about how he butted heads with not only Yasser Arafat, but also Bill Clinton as well, in Camp David in the 90s. And how, of course, when he came back in 2009 to become the longest reigning Israeli prime minister in history, from 2009 to 2021, how he butted heads with Barack Obama and even Donald Trump over this whole Palestinian issue. Of every Israeli prime minister since Oslo, since Rabin, he's the most dismissive of the idea of a Palestinian state. And you know what? That's a complex issue because here's the thing: if I'm looking at it from an Israeli perspective, I'm not gonna want I'm not gonna want a Palestinian state either, because they gave them somewhat of a Palestinian state, and and what do they go and do when the Israelis pull out of Gaza? They go and democratically elect a Hamas government, which the Hamas government is ardently avowed to overthrow the state of Israel itself. So you can't really say that you blame some people on the Israeli right for considering the two-state solution, like we used to talk about in the 90s, as a pipe dream. Now, the treatment of Israeli Arabs and the discrimination of Israeli Arabs, the Arabs of 48, especially the Druze community that serves in the IDF, and giving the Jewish population special treatment over that particular Arab population, especially them, like I said, because the Druze they serve in the IDF, they should be entitled to exactly the same benefits, rights, or whatever uh, um, as Jewish citizens of Israel. If they're talking about limiting their rights and this Jewish national identity stuff and this exclusionary racial and ethnic type politics, then that's wrong, because Arab citizens of Israel are just as much a part of the fabric of Israeli society as Jewish ones. You know what I mean? So that kind of, I don't know if that's what they're talking about, but that kind of far right extremism to the excluding certain people on the basis of race in the society, totally fucked up and totally wrong. Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. If they're if they're proposing something like that, totally wrong. But as far as um, Palestinian issue, it's hard to really say what to do, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Looking at it objectively from both sides. You can't really pull out. You pull out of the West Bank, you pull out of the Gaza Strip. There's already a lot of Jewish families that have already lived there for decades and decades. Uh, I mean, not the Gaza Strip. You pull out of the West Bank, for example, East Jerusalem, Hebron, cities like that. You know, you pull out of you pull out of those cities, and there's already Jewish families that have lived there for decades and decades. What do you do to them? You relocate them to other places. That's what they did in Gaza, and it was a complete disaster, because right now they have Mahmoud Abbas and they have Fatah, but if they were to have elections in West Bank, maybe they would elect Hamas, and that would be the end of uh, uh, Israel as we know it. So um, BiBi has been a leader that is a strong leader. He is strong against Iran. He's the one been blowing this horn of Iran anti-Iranian shit for the longest now. Back back in the day when we had Mahmoud Ahmadinejad at the helm of Iran. Of course, now we have Ibrahim Raisi, who is again more right wing, more militant, clamping down on dissident. But we're seeing how that's going for Iran right now. It's not going well, and that could um, issues with Iran could affect WWE's upcoming PLE Crown Jewel, Roman Reigns versus Logan Paul. They're saying that they might not have the PLE in Saudi Arabia because of the issues going on in the Middle East between Saudi Arabia and Iran, which I have another video on. Their sort of rivalry in the Middle East, but that rivalry between the Arab states and Iran has kind of pushed, thanks to thanks to Iran becoming a superpower in the area and being heavily aggressive to the Arab countries in the area, and the Abraham Accords that Donald Trump put out in 2020 kind of moved Israel closer to a lot of their Arab neighbors, countries like Bahrain, countries like United Arab Emirates, and countries like Sudan that never would have thought to make a deal with Israel, now making deals with Israel. Even Saudi Arabia has come closer to normalizing relationships with Israel, which is great. You know what I mean? But still nothing for the Palestinian people. Still nothing for them on the table. A lot of other countries have said, Arab and non-Arab alike. Some Muslim countries, some newer Muslim countries like Kosovo, for example, or Chad in North Africa, for example, or Morocco, um, countries in Latin America that never did business with Israel on principle because they disliked how they treated the Palestinians, or they never viewed them as legitimate. Now viewing them as legitimate, they say, well, Israel been around since 1948. They ain't going nowhere, so we might as well make deals with them. But BiBi is back. BiBi Netanyahu. We'll see how he does. We'll see how much power the religious right in Israel, the Mizrahi um, uh, segment of the population does. The religious traditionalist back in power, Itamar Ben Gavir, this guy, see how dangerous he becomes, how much of a demagogue he becomes, and see if BiBi can unite all the factions of the right. Because remember, we talked about it when we talked about Shachet before, how Avigdor Lieberman, those that are socially liberal but conservative on foreign issues like the territories, how they have broken away from BiBi, and especially among the um, immigrants from the former Soviet Union, Jewish immigrants from the former Soviet Union. We talked about how there was that split in the right, and how the Likud coalition, the strong Likud coalition that had existed since Menachem Begin in the 70s, was now breaking apart under BiBi's the latter half of BiBi's other term. So we'll see if he can hold the Israeli right wing together. Peace. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Love you guys.